If you are still getting angry if somebody like takes your cup of tea or takes your cup of coffee away, I mean, it's still far, far away from being an elevated soul, from being an elevated being. If small things like this still bothering you, could happen that more and more often you are just dropping something, you are losing something, people take something from you away, it always triggers the same level of your elevation inside of you until you master it, until you have come to the conclusion, okay, it cannot be. For the last 5 years, I'm exploding. Yeah, I'm getting super mad whenever somebody takes my cup of water. So how often will this repeat again until you learn the lesson? And when this happens, it's gone. But now something else comes. Now maybe you start having a relationship, but all the time you are confronted with jealousy. And then you just observe yourself what happens when you are acting upon jealousy. Mostly the outcome is not going to be one that keeps the relationship alive on the long term.
Spread love, man.
You ever get that feeling like your mind is just racing a mile a minute with thoughts? Well, in today's deep dive, we're really going to get into that. We're going to look at the teachings of Shi Heng Yi.
Okay.
He's a Buddhist teacher who offers a very practical approach to taming what they call the monkey mind and finding some inner peace.
It's so interesting how he really gives us a framework for understanding, how our thoughts can actually cause us suffering.
Right.
And then how we can break free from that.
And he starts off with this big statement that 90% of our thoughts are unnecessary.
It really makes you think.
It does.
Like how much mental energy are we spending on things that aren't really serving us?
Exactly. So how do we start to tell the difference between the thoughts that are useful and the ones that are really just kind of clutter?
Well, Shi Heng Yi talks about this idea of two different states of mind.
Okay.
One is the mind-based state, and the other is the mindful state.
So what's the difference between the two?
So in the mind-based state, you're constantly reacting to every single thought that pops up. Like imagine being swept away in a current.
Okay.
Right? You're just kind of at the mercy of the waves.
Yeah.
But in the mindful state, you're more like a surfer.
Okay.
You're choosing which waves to ride. You're observing those thoughts.
So you're not shutting down your thoughts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing you have a choice
Yeah.
in how you're going to respond to those thoughts.
So Shi Heng Yi calls this pattern the thought trap.
Oh, yeah.
And he describes it as a 3-step process where you first latch onto a thought,
Right.
then you feed it more tension, and then you ultimately get swept away by it.
Yeah, like let's say you're trying to work on something really important,
Okay.
but suddenly you have this craving for chocolate cake.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Right. So at first, it's just this little thought about cake.
Yeah.
Harmless enough.
Uh-huh.
But then you start imagining going to the bakery.
Right. Picking out the slice.
Yeah, exactly. And before you know it, you're out the door.
And totally off track
You've been completely hijacked.
by that thought.
Yes.
Okay, so if we're not supposed to be at the mercy of all these runaway thoughts, then what are we working towards?
Shi Heng Yi talks about synchronization.
Oh, okay.
It's aligning our thoughts, our words, and our actions.
So instead of chaos,
Yeah.
we're looking for some unity.
Like think of an orchestra
Okay.
when all the instruments are playing in harmony.
Makes sense. And I find it really fascinating how he connects this idea to his background in martial arts.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He says martial arts training is all about cultivating this very specific alignment between your mind and your body.
So it's not just the mental aspect.
No, it's very embodied.
Okay.
You're learning to move and react with intention.
So our thoughts and our actions are in sync.
Yes, and that sense of alignment, it actually extends beyond ourselves.
What do you mean?
He says that every encounter we have,
Even the random ones.
even the random ones, they all have a purpose
So we should be looking for the deeper meaning. Yeah.
in our relationship.
Exactly. Be present in every interaction.
I like that because it makes everything feel a bit more meaningful.
It's like weaving a tapestry. Every thread, every encounter contributes to the overall beauty.
And speaking of environments, Shi Heng Yi also talks about creating supportive spaces for growth.
Yeah, like a monastery or a retreat center
Right.
designed to minimize distractions.
So we don't all have to go live in a monastery,
Not necessarily.
but we can maybe try and create that feeling
Exactly.
in our own lives.
find those pockets of stillness?
Whether it's a meditation space or just time in nature.
Yeah, being intentional about where we spend our time.
Right, because the world is so full of distraction.
It really is.
It's like choosing the right conditions for a plant to grow.
Exactly.
But in this case, the plant is our own mind.
Nurturing our peace and clarity.
And I love how he frames this idea with the phrase, become already right now the paradise.
Powerful, isn't it?
It is.
It's like he's saying, stop searching for peace.
It's already within you.
And that brings us to this core teaching in Buddhism.
Oh, yeah.
The 2 arrows of suffering.
Okay, so tell me what you know about this.
I know there are 2 arrows.
Right.
And they both relate to suffering.
Okay, so the first arrow represents the unavoidable pain in life.
Okay.
Things we can't control, like illness, loss, disappointment.
The things that are just part of being human?
Exactly. It's like getting caught in the rain.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just get soaked.
No matter what.
But the second arrow,
Yeah.
this is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
It's our reaction to that pain.
So the story we create around it.
Yeah, the resentment we hold on to.
Okay.
The self-pity.
So first arrow is the event.
Right.
Second arrow is our response to it.
And that second arrow,
Yeah.
that's where most of the suffering comes from.
Like getting stung by a bee.
Yeah.
That's the first arrow.
Right.
But then dwelling on it and getting upset about it.
That's the second arrow, stinging yourself over and over.
It's the what ifs and should haves.
Exactly.
That keep us trapped.
In that cycle of pain.
So how do we break free?
He says the key is the present moment,
Okay.
letting go of the past and the anxieties about the future.
And focusing on what we can control.
Right. Our thoughts, our actions, our responses.
So true freedom doesn't come from manipulating the outside world,
It comes from mastering your own mind.
which is where practices like meditation come in
Yes.
to help train the mind
Train the mind to be present
to become more aware
without getting carried away.
by all those thoughts and emotions.
Like building a muscle of mindfulness.
So we've talked about becoming more aware of our thoughts, choosing which ones to engage with, and finding that stillness in the present moment.
Uh-huh.
But I'm curious, what is it that causes suffering in the first place?
Well, Shi Heng Yi, he says it all comes down to a sense of separation.
Separation from what?
Separation from the present moment,
Okay.
from others, from our desired outcomes even.
So it's the clinging and the aversion. That creates suffering.
It's like clinging to possessions, fearing their loss.
Or comparing yourself to others.
Exactly.
And then feeling inadequate.
It's like we're building walls
Yeah.
between ourselves and the world.
And then wondering why we feel so isolated.
And unfulfilled.
But Shi Heng Yi offers a way out of this.
He does.
It's the greatness formula.
Tell me what you know about this.
I know it's a formula for greatness.
Okay, well, it's really quite simple.
Okay.
There are 2 parts.
Okay.
The first part is finding personal fulfillment,
Okay.
and the second part is helping others to do the same.
So living a meaningful life.
Yes.
And then sharing that meaning with others.
And through that connection,
Yeah.
that shared purpose.
Well, we start to dissolve that sense of separation.
Exactly.
Wow, this is really insightful.
I know, right?
I feel like we've already learned so much.
You do.
And we're just getting started with this deep dive.
There's so much more to explore.
I'm excited for the next part.
Me too.
Welcome back to our deep dive.
We're getting into some really practical stuff here.
Yeah, we're looking at Shi Heng Yi's teachings on how to actually work with our minds.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious, like that idea that 90% of our thoughts are unnecessary.
Right.
It's one thing to hear that,
Yeah.
but it's another thing to know what to do about it.
So true. Does Shi Heng Yi give us any advice on how to deal with all that mental clutter?
Yeah, like how do we actually put that into practice?
Well, he really stresses the importance of awareness.
Okay.
Just noticing those thoughts as they come up.
Without judging them.
Without judging them, not trying to push them away.
So just observing.
Like a scientist, you know, just observing a phenomenon.
So creating some space between ourselves and our thoughts.
Exactly. He uses this analogy of watching clouds
Okay.
drifting by.
I like that.
You see them, you acknowledge them, but you don't get caught up.
Right. You don't attach to them.
You just let them pass.
It's like that mindful state we talked about.
Yeah.
That surfer choosing which waves to ride. It seems like that awareness is key.
It is. But our minds are so used to being on autopilot.
Right. Just constantly thinking.
Yeah. It takes practice to break that habit.
So what kind of practices does he recommend?
Well, meditation, of course.
Mhm.
But he also talks about bringing mindfulness into everyday activities.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not just about formal meditation.
No, it's about finding those little moments throughout the day
Okay.
to be present.
Like what kind of moments?
Well, paying attention to the taste of your food,
Okay.
the feeling of your feet on the ground,
Right.
the sound of your breath.
Simple things.
Simple things.
Yeah.
But they can have a big impact.
It's like waking up from a dream
It is.
of distraction.
Yes.
And finally seeing the world clearly.
And as you practice this, you start to notice patterns.
In our thinking.
In your thinking, the same worries popping up.
Same judgments.
Yeah.
Same negative self-talk.
It's like you're getting to know the terrain of your own mind.
Okay, and once we see those patterns, we can start to question them.
We can ask, are these thoughts even true?
Right. Are they helpful?
Are they serving me?
It's like we're becoming more discerning about what we let into our minds.
Like choosing healthy food for your body.
Right.
You choose healthy thoughts for your mind.
This makes me think about Shi Heng Yi's advice about choosing our environments.
Yes. Being mindful of who and what we surround ourselves with.
It's like if we're constantly bombarded with negativity,
Yeah.
it's harder to find that peace.
It's like trying to grow a flower in a desert.
But when we create a supportive environment,
Yes, both internally and externally.
then it becomes easier.
It does. Those seeds of peace can actually take root.
So we've talked about becoming aware of our thoughts, choosing which ones to engage with, and creating a supportive environment. Are there other strategies he offers?
He also talks about understanding the nature of thoughts, reminding us that thoughts are impermanent.
They come and go.
They come and go like waves in the ocean.
That's a big idea in Buddhism, isn't it?
It is the impermanence of all things.
Nothing stays the same.
Nothing stays the same. Not even our thoughts.
So when we really get that, it becomes easier to let go.
To detach from those thoughts.
Because they're not facts.
Exactly. They're just passing phenomena.
They're like visitors.
Yeah.
Not permanent residents.
And are often colored by our emotions.
Right.
Past experiences.
We might overestimate threats.
Yeah.
Or dwell on past hurts.
And not even realize those thoughts are distorted.
So we need to develop a healthy skepticism towards our own thought.
Not taking them too seriously.
Right, but not dismissing them entirely either.
It's about finding that balance.
Observing with curiosity.
Yes, and compassion.
Rather than judgment or fear.
What else do you remember?
I remember that he talked about aligning our thoughts with our actions.
Yes. He says our actions have a powerful influence on our thoughts.
It's like a feedback loop.
It is.
Thoughts, actions, feelings, they all affect each other.
If we're constantly doing things that are out of alignment with our values,
it creates conflict.
It does enter conflict and suffering.
So we need to walk the talk.
Exactly when our actions match our values.
Yeah.
There's a sense of harmony.
And peace.
It's like that synchronization we were talking about.
Bringing everything into alignment.
Becoming whole.
Not fragmented.
That's where the freedom is.
It's not about controlling the outside world.
Right.
It's about mastering our own minds.
And he reminds us that we can find freedom.
Yeah.
Even in the midst of chaos.
By creating those pockets of stillness.
Yes. Even a few conscious breaths.
Can make a difference.
They can help you reconnect.
With ourselves.
Yes, in those moments of stillness. You can tap into your inner wisdom.
Our own capacity for peace.
This has been such a rich exploration.
It has. We've covered so much.
From the nature of thoughts.
To mindfulness.
To compassion.
It's amazing how these ancient teachings are so relevant to our lives today.
What's resonated with you the most?
I think it's the reminder that peace isn't something we have to achieve. It's something we can cultivate.
In this moment.
Right here, right now.
It's a choice.
To be present.
To be aware.
To respond with compassion.
And with all those unnecessary thoughts swirling around, what if you could let them go?
What would that look like?
To focus on what truly matters.
That's a good question.
For all of us.
It's really interesting how Shi Heng Yi takes all these practices for working with our minds and connects it to a greater purpose. Like he's not just talking about personal enlightenment. It's bigger than that.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that interconnectedness.
Exactly. And that reminds me of the greatness formula.
Oh yeah, the 2 parts.
Finding personal fulfillment and helping others do the same.
Such a simple idea, but so profound.
I think what's so interesting about it is that it challenges that idea that self-care and caring for others are somehow opposite.
Yeah, like they have to be in conflict.
But Shi Heng Yi is suggesting that they actually work together.
They complement each other.
So it's about finding that balance.
Yeah, recognizing that our well-being is tied to the well-being of others.
Which brings us to the idea of compassion.
Such a central theme.
And he talks about cultivating compassion both for ourselves and for others.
Because if we're constantly judging ourselves,
Right, criticizing ourselves.
how can we possibly offer genuine compassion to anyone else?
It makes sense.
Yeah, he says everyone's struggling in their own way,
Yeah.
carrying their own burdens,
And we all deserve kindness.
including ourselves.
So it's about letting go of that judgment
Meeting people where they are,
with an open heart
willingness to listen,
and extending that same kindness to ourselves.
being patient with ourselves,
We're giving.
recognizing that we're all works in progress.
We're going to make mistakes.
We're going to have those moments where we fall short.
But that doesn't mean we're not worthy of compassion.
It's about embracing that imperfection
In ourselves and in others.
and in that space of acceptance. That's where the real connection happens.
And the growth.
So we've covered a lot in this deep dive.
We have the nature of our thoughts.
Mindfulness,
Aligning our actions with our values.
cultivating compassion.
It's really incredible how these ancient teachings offer so much guidance for our modern lives.
What has stood out to you the most from exploring Shi Heng Yi's teachings?
I think what's really resonated with me is that peace is not some far-off destination. It's something we can find right now.
In this moment.
And with all those unnecessary thoughts we've been talking about,
Yeah.
what would it look like to just let them go?
To focus on what truly matters.
For ourselves and for the world around us.
It's a question worth exploring.
It is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We hope it's given you some valuable tools.
And an inspiration for your journey.